Squid Monolith review. Alright, Monolith is the second album from Squid, a 5-piece rock band from Brighton that have been a leading presence in the UK's recent emergence of modern post-punk music. There's many bands that join Squid in this movement: Fontaines DC, Black Media, Black Country New Road, Idols, Shame, Courting, The Murder Capital, Yard Act, The Lounge Society. I could really go on and on. There's been a massive resurgence of modern, gritty, quirky post-punk music. However, I do think it's pretty easy to see that Squid do a lot musically and artistically to set themselves apart from this crowd. They're signed to Warp Records, a label that formerly only had a roster of electronic music artists. In the past 5 or 10 years, they began signing artists from every corner of the musical spectrum. There's hip-hop artists on Warp now, R&B singers, classical music composers, and rock music as well, with Squid and maybe Eve Toomer essentially being the flagship rock artists on the lineup, both having now released 2 dedicated rock albums with Warp. The fact that Squid are even on here should be kind of an indicator that they're going to offer something memorable. It is extremely rare and special to get a non-electronic music producer on this label. I made a reaction video to Squid's debut album, Bright Green Field, which released in 2021. I love this album. It was a real smack in the face. Diving into Monolith, it was quickly noticeable to me that the intensity has been dialed back very significantly. This is a much quieter record for Squid. It's a lot less showy. This was my initial impression, and with this being the case, my first run-through of these songs innately wasn't quite as show-stopping of an experience as the one Bright Green Field provided me with. This could be seen as maybe a disappointment. It's always fun to have a shocking, crazy, surprising first listen, but I didn't necessarily find this change disappointing. This change actually was quite exciting to me. I was excited to hear an album that could instead show its true colors on repeat listens, as opposed to, throw me across the freaking room on the first listen. I like the prospect of this, because that personally is not what happened to me during my time with the first album, Bright Green Field. That's a great album, but it wears its bag of tricks pretty loud and proud from listen 1. At least that's how it hit me. It is a very freakish and unhinged record. Monolith, though, does a great job of setting you up for this more subtle experience with its opening track, Swing in a Dream. It becomes quickly evident listening to this song and this album that the band very much still has it. There is nothing more disheartening than a band you love taking a risky plunge like this, switching up their style, only for you to come away from it wishing they had just offered you another helping of the last record. Just do Bright Green Field 2. This did not happen here. I wasn't clamoring for just a rehash of what they've done before. This was a very entertaining album. The deft and experimental playing is still really present on this album in every corner of Monolith, but you'll just find the difference here is that it's more tucked away behind dingy, shaded melodies as opposed to being thrown in your face. This is especially the case on this first track, Swing in a Dream. I found this song to be deceptively catchy. The guitar licks that get introduced in the 10th second of the song were still swirling around in the back of my head after having heard the entire album. It was instantly one of my favorite Squid songs. I saw that this record was going to be quite short, quite tight, only 8 tracks, 41 minutes, compared to Bright Green Field's 11 tracks, 55 minutes, is filled with pretty hair-raising and disquieting moments that find power in how easily they could just go unnoticed. This album has a darkness permeating throughout it that I really connected with, and I strongly suggest giving this record time to really seep its way into you, because it was only until the 3rd or 4th or 5th listen I really started to enjoy and appreciate some of the finer details in the production. Focusing back on that first track, though, the eerie lyrics on this song kind of depict being stuck inside a dream, but enjoying the escape it provides, describing the real world as straight lines by comparison, which I found quite striking. It prepares you pretty aptly for the eerier side of Squid that you're going to hear on this album, and after hearing it multiple times, I wouldn't say it's any better or worse necessarily than Bright Green Field. It's a very competent and enjoyable album. I think I might prefer Bright Green Field a smidge more, just due to its more unhinged and more bombastic nature. I just find that a bit more appealing. I don't see it making the same splash as Bright Green Field, though, due to its more subdued nature. There's nothing on here that'll knock your socks off quite like Narrator does from that first album, and this album does have its loud, bombastic moments, but this is actually where I think the biggest negative of the album does live. In my opinion, Squid failed to give these aggressive spots an appropriate spotlight. on Oh Monolith, as much as I like the tune of Devil's Den. The aggressive crescendo at the end is quite the pick-me-up. It's a pretty low-stakes track until you reach the final 30 seconds, but ultimately this crescendo feels more like a tacked-on outro rather than a blistering statement, which I think that's what it would have been if I was listening to the debut instead. Very rarely on that debut do you get a burst of aggression that just is a quick in-and-out sort of thrill. They evolve and grow into these monsters, and I wish this album decided to do that more, and I understand why you would avoid that. You know, you want to separate Oh Monolith and have it be its own thing. I appreciate that among that, they still take the time to tease their ability to really blow your face away with their builds and manic performances and all that, but they never decide to really commit, and I don't know, I found that a little bit disappointing. Maybe they didn't want to take the risk of just making Bright Green Field 2. I respect that, I sympathize with that, but I think it ends up kind of disrupting the flow of the album for me whenever the decision is made to sort of build a large, aggressive, loud, smashy smash moment. Like the midpoint of the track Siphon Song is an awkward moment for me. I think it teases something really dazzling and exciting, only to have it kind of fizzle into a transition to the next track, Undergrowth, which is a great transition, but I don't know, I just kind of find myself clamoring for more. It ends up being a sea of sort of unfinished ideas. I feel like there's probably some potential that wasn't quite tapped into and explored in the way you kind of want. At least that was my experience. And amongst this, the album loses, I think, a sense of identity. It's pretty easy to pin down the personality of Bright Green Field. It's freakish, it's inconsistent, has a fucking wild drone sequence at the end of Boy Races, it's got its mad moments, but at the end of the day, it's a malformed beast of an album. That is its power, that's its beauty, that's its strength. Oh Monolith doesn't really have as much of a defining characteristic in that way. You have tracks like The Closer, which are very tribal, rhythmic, and groovy. Undergrowth is very groovy as well with its bass line, but despite all of this kind of confusion and inability to find its footing, everything on the album, including those moments I'm describing as kind of disappointing or confusing, they sound extremely good. Producer Dan Carey returns to the boards for this record, and he absolutely nails it. He has really proven himself to be such a capable force as a producer, bringing colourful and punchy life to the sounds of not just Squid, but Fontaine's DC, Wet Leg, Black Midi, Slow Tie, just to name a few. Though in my opinion, his best work has existed in what he's accomplished with Squid. Every sound in this record's mix has an eerie level of clarity and precision. He manages to make, like, some of my favourite moments are extremely subtle. He makes the most subtle noises just pop out as groovy and addictive. Undergrowth, for example, is basically the centerpiece of the album, at least it feels that way to me. It's a sprawling opus of a track that Dan Carey turns into this hypnotic rhythmic banger. I truly think without his keen ear on the boards, this song, the song that Squid have written and performed here in Undergrowth, wouldn't be nearly as replayable and entertaining to hear as it is. The composition is compelling, but I really think it pops sound-wise thanks to Dan's production. The experience of hearing the closing 3 tracks on this album is an absolute thrill. You get some of frontman Ollie's most deranged vocal work to date on Greenlight particularly. Again, a closing track that really sounds like a cult initiation ritual theme song, turned into a medley of groovy angst trying to escape from the dungeons of murky post-punk. It's a really amazing finish. The mesmerizing howls playing among those pulsing drums. It makes for some of Squid's most creative music yet. Cannot wait for you to hear what they have achieved on that track if you haven't dived into the album yet. I think Squid killed it. I think they did a really good job evolving what the definition of a Squid song is here. I think there could have been more attention and precise focus on building and determining the general atmosphere and identity of what Oh Monolith really is. There was a lot of attention to the flow of the album. The transitions are very smooth. The sound is great. However, its lasting impression doesn't really quite have the magnitude you would want it to, but as a Squid record, 8 tracks, they're all pretty solid tracks. It's a very entertaining helping and evolution of what Squid do. Some of the creative choices, when you hear the vocal effects on Siphon Song, you will feel a chill all over your body, and stuff like that really makes this stand out and effectively deliver as a Squid record. If you're a Squid fan, this is an exciting left turn, I think, and they do stick the landing overall. I would score this record a very proud and comfortable and happy and confident 7 out of 10, and I do recommend you give it a listen.